On a windy Sunday afternoon in Sacramento, with the sky still and late fall light dusting the porch maples in gold, I froze on my parents' front steps. Two gray plastic bins sat by the lawnmower, tape slapped across the lids, scrawled Lucas, Chloe. The second I realized they were my kids' things, a chill shot down my spine. Then, through the cracked doorway, I saw Brian carrying Lucas's blue desk lamp down the stairs to the basement. As soon as I stepped into the foyer, the damp smell mixed with bleach drifted up from below. At the end of the hall, my mom was folding a comforter, and my dad was leaning on the railing. The tight rip of tape sealing a bin made my throat close. The moment she saw me, my mom lifted her chin and said, "The kids will be in the basement for a while."
My heart stopped at that.
Right after, I noticed Chloe's little wooden bed being dragged down the steps, the legs scraping the carpet with a harsh sound. My dad put his hands on his hips and said to me, "Ethan's still little. He needs a brighter, quieter room." The second those words landed, my head spun while my body stayed frozen. I heard my daughter's footsteps on the hardwood and turned. Chloe was clutching her clarinet to her chest, eyes wide and lost. I swallowed hard and held it together. From the kitchen doorway, Brian shrugged and said, "It's just a few weeks. Don't make it a thing." That shrug lit a slow fire in me. On the narrow stairs to the basement, I looked up at a weak yellow bulb. The old paint on the wall was blotched with a long black stain from years of damp. The instant I pictured Lucas wheezing in that heavy air, my chest tightened, not from pain but from the truth settling in. When I saw Brian set the lamp in a corner by a stuck window, I pressed my lips together and told myself, if I don't stop this here, the line disappears for good. In that flash, I saw a future where my kids learned their worth less than the family's golden grandchild. In the middle of the hall, I straightened up, looked out the window at the pale California sky, and told myself we had to flip the board. Then everything went quiet. Only my heartbeat was left. Right then, I knew this story didn't start in the basement. It started long before that. Right after that haunting afternoon, to help you see why it all happened, I have to go back and tell you about me and my family. I'm Rachel Morgan, 36, a full-time pediatric nurse at the Children's Hospital in Sacramento, California. My days smell like disinfectant and sound like babies crying, with 12-hour shifts stacked back to back. I didn't choose this work for the money. Since I was little, I've loved caring for kids. But it comes with a price. A brutal schedule and a paycheck that barely covers life. When my 12-year marriage to Daniel fell apart, I dropped into a darkness most people can't imagine. Daniel, my ex-husband, was a high-paid software engineer, and our home ran mostly on his income. After the divorce, all I had was a small support payment and 2 kids who needed a steady hand. I jumped from part-time to full-time, trying to cover tuition and build a future for them. That's when my parents, Helen and Robert Morgan, reached out. "Come stay with us for a while, until you find your footing." I grabbed that offer like a drowning person grabbing a life ring. My 2 kids, Lucas and Chloe, were the only light in those shaky days. Lucas is 10 and has an artist's soul. He'll sit for hours with colored pencils, sketching castles on scrap paper, or building Lego webs like a tiny engineer. With that creativity comes a tender heart. One careless word can put tears in his eyes. Chloe is the opposite. Strong, decisive, the first to stand up for a friend when something isn't fair. She plays sports, practices the clarinet, and never hesitates to raise her hand in class. 2 different natures that fit together. Our little home was always full of laughter, mixed with harmless squabbles. My parents, Helen and Robert, look like a typical retired couple in the Sacramento suburbs. 2-story house with gray roof tiles, deep red roses in the front yard, a straight white picket fence. But inside those brick walls is a truth I grew up with. Favoritism. I'm the oldest daughter, the one who carried the load. Study hard. Follow the rules. My younger brother, Brian, was the star. He dropped out of college, but my parents bankrolled his tech startup. He hit it big and now makes 6 figures. At family dinners, once Brian walked in, Every story turned into a highlight reel about him. I learned to live with the comparisons all through childhood. I never thought history would repeat itself.
This time, not just with me.
With my kids. What made it sting even more was when Brian and his wife, Sophie, had their first son, Ethan. His arrival tipped a scale that was already off inside the Morgan house. In that moment, I still didn't see the whole picture. I told myself, they're just excited to have a new grandson. I didn't know Ethan's presence would spark the torch of favoritism that had been smoldering for years. And from there, the life my kids and I had in that house was going to shift completely. The day we moved into my parents' two-story house, I told myself this was just temporary. The small living room got turned into a space for Lucas and Chloe, while I took the guest room. Everyone said it'd only be a few months. Once I saved enough for a deposit, the three of us would have our own place. I believed it, and I tried to plant that same hope in my kids. Sacramento mornings were usually chilly, mist hanging low along the elm-lined street. I'd leave by 6 to make it to my first shift. Lucas and Chloe went off to school with their grandparents and got picked up in the afternoon. Some days, I'd squeeze in a quick stop at the cheapest grocery store around. I'd grab frozen veggies, discount chicken, and always something the kids loved: spaghetti for Lucas, tacos for Chloe. Even living under their roof, I didn't want to be seen as a burden. I pitched in for groceries, took charge of cooking and cleaning. I taught Lucas and Chloe to be polite, put toys away, and stay quiet during their grandparents' rest time. Deep down, I kept telling myself if I stayed considerate, everything would be fine. To give the kids a sense of stability, I came up with a game. I hung a savings chart in the bathroom. Each time I managed to set aside money from an overnight shift, I added a little star. Lucas and Chloe counted them eagerly, like they were counting down to Christmas. Chloe often asked, "Mom, by Christmas, will we have our own house?" And I'd smile. If we try hard, we just might. No matter how tired I was, I tried to carve out cozy nights for the three of us. Sometimes I'd bake cookies, then we'd pile into my bed and watch cartoons. Lucas would sketch, while Chloe practiced a few notes on her clarinet, off-key but cheerful. In those moments, I could forget the cramped rooms, forget my mom's watchful eyes. All I felt was peace, knowing we still had each other. But tension was already taking root. My mom would say things like, "Rachel, you let the kids use their tablets too much." Or, "Back in my day, I didn't need organic snacks to raise you." I'd swallow my words, force a smile. I needed them to watch the kids, so I could work. I couldn't afford a fight. Lucas is sensitive, he could always pick up on the air around him. One day, while I was folding laundry, he whispered, "Mom, I think Grandma doesn't like us that much." I squeezed his hand and said, "That's not true, honey. She just shows love differently." But inside, my heart cracked. Back then, I kept convincing myself I only had to put up with it for a few more months. I thought I could handle the comments, the cold stares. As long as Lucas and Chloe still smiled. As long as the stars on that chart kept multiplying. I was wrong. I didn't see that this so-called fine was nothing but a thin mask, waiting to split the moment a real storm hit. And that spark, the one that would light the fuse, had a name. Ethan. The golden grandchild of the Morgan family. The moment Brian and his wife, Sophie, announced their first son was born, the air inside the Morgan house changed. The Sacramento sun was blazing that day, but for me, the sky felt like it caved in as I watched my parents cling to baby Ethan like he was the family's only treasure. By the first week, the dining room, the one that used to hold our old family photos, got cleared out and turned into a nursery. My mom beamed. "We need a warm, cozy place for our grandson." I stood there staring at a brand new wooden crib, a modern rocker, and a white noise machine, all from a fancy store. Meanwhile, Lucas and Chloe still slept on a worn-out bed taken from the old office, one side of the frame already loose. That first Christmas after Ethan arrived, the favoritism was plain. Under the tree, huge boxes wrapped in shiny red and gold for Ethan. Inside were the newest stroller and brand-name clothes. Lucas and Chloe got a couple small toys and a cheap paperback. Chloe tried to smile. Lucas tried to hide how his eyes dimmed. My heart squeezed when I saw it. But in front of everyone, I smiled like it didn't matter. One evening, Lucas brought over a drawing he made, a sunset by the American River, and handed it to his grandmother. My mom glanced at it and set it on the table. "That's nice, honey, but look, Ethan smiles just like Brian did when he was little." Those simple words were enough to make Lucas blush and carry his drawing back to his room without a sound. As for Chloe, one afternoon she was jumping rope in the yard when my mom scolded her. "Sweetheart, don't be so loud. Ethan's napping in the living room." I looked through the window. Ethan was actually wide awake in Sophie's arms, watching a kids' show. I heard Chloe swallow her frustration and set the rope down on the concrete. Day by day, every conversation in the house became all about Ethan. At every meal, my mom would announce, "Ethan rolled over." Ethan gave his first smile. Meanwhile, Lucas and Chloe's wins at school barely got a nod. One time, Chloe shared that she got an A in math. Her words got drowned out by laughter when Ethan slapped his oatmeal spoon on the floor. I kept trying to keep the peace. On my days off, I took the kids to the park. We sat under the oaks and ate the sandwiches I packed. I told them, "Let's be patient. Your grandparents are just excited about the new baby." Inside, I knew I was building a thin wall to protect them from cuts no one else could see. One night after a late shift, I walked into the kitchen and saw the fridge board had changed. Lucas's drawings and Chloe's certificates were gone. In their place were Ethan's vaccine schedule and new photos. I froze under the cold hum of the fluorescent light, my throat tight. Right then, I knew this wasn't a passing phase. It had turned into an unwritten rule in this house. Everything belonged to Ethan. And from that moment on, I felt the warning in my bones. The fragile calm the three of us had was about to blow away like the hot, dry wind that rips through the Central Valley in summer. That moment came with a quiet message. This was only the beginning of a very long test. Right after that spring, Brian and his wife, Sophie, announced their 4-bedroom house across town would be gutted and remodeled. Instead of renting a place, they moved straight into my parents' home. It all happened so fast I couldn't even object. My dad clapped Brian on the shoulder and said, "Of course, son. This is your home too." That cut deep. He had never said anything like that to me, even though my kids and I had been there almost 2 years. In the first week, the small living room that Lucas and Chloe used got squeezed even tighter to make space for Ethan's crib and walker. The few corners where my kids were allowed to keep their toys were boxed up by Sophie and stacked in the garage. "They're too messy," she said. Meanwhile, Ethan's things took over the whole room. Stuffed animals, the stroller, even a tower of diapers. One afternoon, Lucas burst through the door with a note from school. His painting was chosen for the county art show. He hurried to show his grandmother. She waved him off. Later, I'm helping Sophie pick curtains for the new house. I watched his shoulders drop. His eyes fell to the floor. The sight hit me like a hand around my chest. Chloe, my high-energy girl, started losing her space too. She used to jump rope or shoot hoops in the backyard after school. If the ball thumped more than 3 times, my mom came out with a frown. "Chloe, can't you see Ethan needs his nap?" Another time, Chloe practiced her clarinet in her room for 15 minutes. Sophie rushed in. "Can you be quiet? I have an important call." Chloe put the instrument away without a word. Her eyes were pink. Even dinner showed the gap. The menu always followed Brian's taste. Seafood pizza, medium rare steak, pasta with cream sauce. Lucas can't stand the smell of shrimp. Chloe hates heavy cheese. When Lucas asked politely, "Grandma, is there a sandwich?" my mom's face went stern. "When I was young, we ate what we had. You should learn to be grateful." 5 minutes later, Ethan flipped his plate onto the floor, and everyone laughed. He's just a kid. He's exploring. After that, Lucas and Chloe almost disappeared from the shared spaces. They stayed in the cramped room, drawing or doing homework in silence. One night when I got home, I found them huddled on the back steps in the dark, staring out. "Mom, It feels like we're not supposed to be here, Lucas whispered. I held him tight. Inside me, helplessness spread. The family meetings Brian started only poured fuel on the fire. He talked with my parents about money and the future of the Morgan line like he was the only pillar we had. I sat there quiet, feeling like my kids and I were nameless guests. Once, I said maybe we should care more about Lucas and Chloe's feelings. My dad waved it away. They're too sensitive. They need to learn to share. I picked up more night shifts, partly to grow the savings for our own place, partly to avoid the suffocating air in that house. But even that got twisted. My mom told the neighbors, Rachel's never home. She doesn't take care of her kids. If it weren't for us, who knows what would happen? The truth was, I paid for everything. Lucas's asthma meds, Chloe's music lessons, the weekly groceries too. Day by day, hour by hour, I felt like an outsider in the home where I grew up. Lucas and Chloe, once full of laughter in the yard, shrank into shadows. I kept asking myself if I was too weak for letting them live through this. In that moment, I knew the undercurrent had turned into a storm, and I could sense a break coming. Something hard and awful waiting just ahead. Right after a 12-hour shift at the children's hospital, a stream of shaky texts from Lucas and Chloe lit up my phone. Mom, Grandpa, and Uncle Brian are moving our stuff to the basement. Grandma says we have to give the upstairs room to Ethan. Mom, I don't want to be down there. It's cold, and there are spiders. My heart pounded. My head spun. I called home. No one picked up. I begged a coworker to cover the rest of my shift and drove back shaking and choking back tears. The Sacramento streets, I knew by heart, felt endless. The rows of maples outside my window blurred into dark streaks. When I opened the door, Lucas and Chloe were curled on the sofa, eyes red. In the kitchen, my mom and Sophie were sipping tea like nothing was happening. What's going on? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. Chloe jumped up and wrapped her arms around me, tears rolling. They said we don't deserve the upstairs room. I walked straight into the kitchen and met my mother's eyes. Why are my kids' things in the basement? She answered calmly. Simple. Ethan needs a bigger, brighter room. Your kids are older. They can adapt. The basement isn't so bad. My throat closed. I knew that basement. Low ceiling, stained walls, green mold in the corners, bone cold in winter. I clenched my fists and said each word. Lucas has asthma. That damp air could trigger an attack any time. My mother shook her head. Rachel, you always exaggerate. I raised you in worse. Just then, my dad and Brian came in from the yard. My dad clapped his hands like he was finalizing a deal. It's settled. Brian and Sophie need space, and the kids have the basement. That's fair. I turned and looked at the people I loved. My dad, my mom, my brother, my sister-in-law. Not one of them was thinking about the two kids shaking in the living room. A cold spread through my chest. It felt like I was seeing my family's true face for the first time. Lucas tugged my sleeve and whispered, Mom, I don't want to stay. I can't breathe in the basement. My chest tightened. In that moment, I knew the line had been crossed. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was denying my kids' worth to their faces. I took a deep breath. My voice came out steady and sharp. You've decided my nephew gets the best room and my kids get shoved into the worst. Fine. But I won't let this go on for one more day. Brian snorted. Where are you going to go? You're a nurse. How are you paying rent? You and the kids have nowhere else. His sneer hit like a spark in oil. I looked him straight in the eye, anger mixing with a new kind of strength. You're wrong, Brian. I've had an exit plan for a long time. Chloe stayed glued to my hand. Lucas stood behind me, waiting. I looked at them both and said 3 words they'll never forget. Pack your bags. The kitchen went silent. The wall clock ticked, marking my decision. My dad's face flushed. He shouted, Stop being dramatic. No one's kicking you out. I turned back, calm but firm. No, Dad. Your choice already told us where we stand in this family. And I won't raise my kids in this kind of unfairness. Lucas and Chloe ran upstairs and gathered what mattered most: the clarinet, the box of pencils, an old plush dragon. When they came back, I saw more than fear in their eyes. I saw trust, the belief that I would fight for them. Right then, the truth hit hard. My own family had chosen the golden grandchild over my kids. That blow hurt, but it made me stronger than ever. In that moment, I knew we were leaving, and we weren't looking back the way we used to. The second the front door slammed behind me and the kids, my mind snapped into focus. I wasn't empty-handed like they thought. For almost 2 years since the day we moved in, I'd been quietly getting ready for the worst. After every overnight shift at the children's hospital, once the charts were done, I'd sit in the break room with my old laptop and track every dollar. No more Starbucks. I brought a thermos from home. I clipped coupons, bought the kids secondhand, and anytime I earned extra from a double, I sent it straight to savings. Lucas and Chloe didn't know the details, but they loved adding tiny stars to the chart in the bathroom whenever I said we were one step closer. When Ethan was born and the favoritism started to show, I reached out to an old friend, Nancy, a longtime coworker. She put me in touch with a local realtor. On some lunch breaks, I'd sneak out to see rentals around Sacramento. I couldn't rush a decision, but I knew I needed an escape route in case the line got crossed. 3 weeks before the basement day, I signed a lease on a 3-bedroom house 10 minutes from the hospital. Small place, a backyard with oaks, and most important, a separate room for each kid. When I wrote my name on that paper, my hand shook. Part fear, part relief. I didn't tell anyone, not even Lucas and Chloe. I didn't want to plant hope too soon. I wanted everything locked in. I'd already ordered the basics: a cheap but sturdy full bed, used desks from the flea market, a few bright bed sets the kids had pointed to in a catalog. Delivery time for the day I got the keys. I thought I had time to move quietly and keep some peace. But my parents' decision today forced me to speed everything up. That same evening, sitting in the car at the end of the driveway, I turned to my kids. Remember how I promised we'd have our own place? It's coming a little sooner. I've taken care of it. Lucas lifted his head, eyes lighting up. Really, Mom? Not the basement? Chloe gripped her clarinet and whispered, I just want a place where I'm allowed to play. I smiled through tears. And that's exactly what you'll have. In that moment, a different kind of strength rose in me. Not a flash of anger. A steady resolve. Every exhausting night shift. Every penny I pinched. It finally meant something. This was the start of our way out. Under Sacramento's yellow streetlights, I held the wheel and said to myself, they think I'm stuck here. I've been ready since day one. And now it's time to go. The next morning, the Sacramento sky was heavy, thick clouds warning of a coming storm. I woke earlier than usual, mind tangled, but eyes bright with a rare kind of resolve. Lucas and Chloe sat side by side on the edge of the bed, clutching their little backpacks like if they let go, everything would disappear. As soon as we started packing clothes, a hard knock rattled the door. My dad walked in, voice sharp. Rachel, what are you doing? You're taking the kids away over a small arrangement? I turned, steady. This isn't a small arrangement. It's my kids' health and dignity. I won't let them grow up being treated like that. My mom came in right behind him, eyes flashing. We've fed you and given you a roof for almost 2 years. This is how you repay us, by leaving? I took a breath and swallowed the lump in my throat. Mom, I am grateful for this roof. But gratitude doesn't mean staying silent when my kids are pushed into a damp basement. While we went back and forth, Brian and Sophie showed up. Brian held Ethan, his mouth curled in a smirk. You think you're tough? On a nurse's salary, how are you renting in Sacramento? You'll be back here soon. I met his eyes and didn't blink. You're about to find out I'm not who you think I am. I signed a lease. Our things are scheduled for delivery. We're leaving today. No one's stopping us. The room went quiet for a beat. For the first time, I saw surprise on Brian's face. My mom blinked fast, like She couldn't believe I'd planned ahead. My dad slapped the arm of the chair, face red. If you walk out that door, don't expect open arms when you come back. I looked at him, sadness settling but my stance unshaken. I stopped expecting that a long time ago, Dad. Lucas and Chloe rolled their suitcases down the stairs. Chloe hugged her clarinet. Lucas held a sketchbook and the old stuffed dragon. They didn't cry, but their eyes held something solid. They knew I wouldn't leave them behind. Pride and ache rose together in me, and that mix gave me strength. Out in the driveway, Sophie's voice cut through the air. Rachel, you're tearing this family apart for your ego. I turned with a small, cool smile. Family isn't a place where my kids get looked down on. Family is where everyone is valued. If that isn't here, I have to find it somewhere else. Nancy, my coworker, had promised we could crash at her place for a few days. When the engine started, my parents and Brian stood on the porch, their faces a knot of anger, confusion, and shock. In the rearview mirror, I saw Lucas and Chloe in the back seat, shoulder to shoulder, their faces softening. Lucas asked, Mom, do we really have our own place? I smiled, my throat tight. Yes, buddy. Our place. Not a basement. From the back seat, Chloe leaned her head toward me and whispered, I just want a place where I can play my music and no one tells me to be quiet. I gripped the wheel, eyes stinging. You will, sweetheart. I promise. In that moment, even with my own family turning their backs, I felt lighter, like I'd set down a weight I'd carried for years. With the engine humming and the wet road stretching ahead, I knew I'd made the right choice. Right then, a quiet voice inside me said this isn't an ending. It's a beginning. And I knew the three of us were on our way to a real home, a place where Lucas's laughter and Chloe's music could rise without being crushed by cruel favoritism. That same night, Nancy opened her door and welcomed the three of us into her warm little house on the edge of Sacramento. She set up an air mattress in the living room for Lucas and Chloe, and I took the spare bed. Nancy had vanilla ice cream ready and rented an animated movie, like she knew exactly what my kids needed to shake off the heaviness. As the screen light danced across their tear-streaked faces, I watched their eyes glow with real joy for the first time. In the days that followed, the air shifted. Lucas wasn't silent like a statue anymore. He giggled when Nancy praised his colored pencil drawing of the Golden Gate. Chloe took out her clarinet and practiced again. Music filled the living room, and no one frowned or told her to stop. I sat there watching, tears rising. How long had it been since I heard that clarinet ring out freely? A week later, we got the keys to our rental. A 3-bedroom house painted soft beige, a white fence wrapping the backyard, and a shady oak. When the three of us stepped inside, it felt like a cool breeze washed through our hearts. The bedrooms were still empty, but Lucas and Chloe ran around, racing to pick one. Lucas chose the room facing the yard so he could sketch the view. Chloe picked the one by the big window so the light would pour in when she practiced. That first night, we spread mattresses on the living room floor and ate hot pizza from our usual spot. Lucas taped his newest drawing to the fridge. Chloe tried a few notes on her clarinet. The sound echoed, uninterrupted, and I burst into tears. Lucas blinked at me. Mom, why are you crying? I wiped my face and smiled. Because I finally see you being yourselves. While life for the three of us started to lift, I heard from relatives that things weren't so rosy for Brian and Sophie. Without me cooking and cleaning, my mom, past 60, was worn out with a restless baby. Dinners fell apart when Ethan cried, while Brian still invited friends over to watch football and left Sophie snapping at everyone. Cracks started to show in that perfect family. As for me, after a few steady weeks, I was promoted to charge nurse. Fewer night shifts, better pay, more time with Lucas and Chloe. I signed them up for after-school activities. Lucas joined the art club. Chloe made the school band. Their teachers said both were improving fast, spirits brighter than ever. One night, as I was clearing the table, Lucas came over and set his small hand on mine. Mom, I like it here. I feel like I can breathe. I froze, then pulled him close, my heart racing. Chloe stepped out of her room with her clarinet and added, "Me too. Here, I don't have to be scared my music will bother anyone." In that moment, I knew every sacrifice, every brutal shift, every tear was worth it. We weren't outsiders in the Morgan house anymore. We had built a real home, a place where Lucas and Chloe could grow up with love and respect. I also knew our journey wasn't over. My family, Helen, Robert, and Brian, would try to pull us back or push us around sooner or later. But as I watched my kids laugh in the backyard under the Sacramento sunset, one thing was clear. This time, we had solid ground. And no one was taking it away. For a second, I saw a future where our wounds slowly heal, even as new tests wait ahead. And I knew that me, Lucas, and Chloe were ready. 6 months after the day we left my parents' house, life had changed so much even I could barely believe it. Our 3-bedroom rental had turned into a real home. Lucas's paintings covered the walls. Shelves held Chloe's clarinet and her certificates. The kitchen always smelled like the cookies we baked on weekends. Laughter filled every room. A sound I thought we'd lost came back as our daily soundtrack. At work, I officially became the charge nurse at the children's hospital. Better pay, a steadier schedule. Most important, more time with my kids. No more racing into night shifts every afternoon. I could sit beside Lucas and watch him paint the Central Valley landscapes. I could listen to Chloe play the pieces she practiced on her own. I saw my kids blooming in this new place, a place untouched by the shadow of favoritism. Meanwhile, news from the old Morgan house wasn't great. Relatives said that without me cooking and helping out, my mom wore down fast. Brian and Sophie argued more. Ethan cried. My dad complained about the chaos. They once thought I was the burden. The truth was, my presence had kept that roof from caving in sooner. One morning in May, a small miracle showed up. I found a 3-bedroom house for sale in the neighborhood near Lucas and Chloe's school. Thanks to the new salary, 2 years of savings, and a mortgage, I made an offer. A few weeks later, I held the keys. My feet felt like they weren't touching the ground. Moving day came with a bright blue Sacramento sky and sunlight pouring over red roof tiles. Friends, coworkers, and Nancy came to help, turning it into a little party. Lucas hurried to hang his dream house painting on the living room wall. Chloe ran around the backyard, testing corners to find the best spot to practice. I stood on the porch, took a long breath, and for the first time in years felt it deep and clear. This was our home. That afternoon, my parents came by looking awkward. My dad quietly checked the inspection report and pointed out a few notes about the roof and the pipes. When they left, he stopped at the porch and said softly, "I'm proud of you. Buying a house and raising good kids on your own, that's not easy." I nodded as tears rose. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was the first honest recognition I'd ever heard from him. That night, after the kids fell asleep, I sat alone in the living room with a few unopened boxes still around me. Warm light washed over the new walls, and my chest filled with emotion. I thought about those cold basement nights Lucas and Chloe were almost forced into. I thought about my brother's contempt and my mother's blame. Those things pushed me to the edge, but they also forced me to stand up stronger than ever. In that moment, I saw the biggest lesson. Family isn't just blood. Real family is respect and fair love. And sometimes, to protect your kids, you have to stand up and walk away from the place you once called home. Lucas once said to me, "Mom, I can breathe here." That simple line was everything I needed. I built a space where my kids can be who they are. Creative, strong, confident. Not shadows hidden behind some golden grandchild. That night, after I pulled the blanket up over my 2 sleeping kids, I whispered, "We're finally home." In the quiet, I heard my own heart answer.
Light, proud, free.
Have you ever had to make a hard choice to protect your family? If this story speaks to you, share it with me. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is pack your bags and build the life you and your kids truly deserve.